I believe one of my subscribers actually sent me this, but I can't remember which one did. But I actually came across it on Willie D's channel. Now, this is going to be a perfect example right here that even if you are black and you have a lot of money, it's certain industries or institutions that won't even want to deal with you. A lot of people would tend to think, well, my money is green. Yeah, your money may be green, but the hand that is leaving is not what they prefer. And it's dealing with JP Morgan. Now, let me tell you something about JP Morgan. JP Morgan was one of those banks. Okay, let me rephrase that. It was a list that I came across on Atlanta Black Star a few years ago, and I think I did a video about it on my original channel, where they were talking about these different institutions that got founded off of the labor of slavery. And JP Morgan was one of those institutions. It was damn near the top of the list. I will not forget. I think Wells Fargo was on. Also JP Morgan. It was one of the two. But I think JP Morgan was one of those banks. As a matter of fact, many of the banks in America were founded off of slave labor. So imagine what this story entails. So this man's name is Jimmy Kennedy, and he's a former NFL player, and he basically came out and said that JP Morgan discriminated against him, and they pretty much made racial comments towards not only him being a black man, but also because of his size. Now, I'm going to go ahead and read this article and wait till you hear what they said to him, because they said there was recording, so he actually recorded the interaction. The New York Times released recordings of former NFL defensive tackle Jimmy Kennedy being given the runaround when he wanted to secure a private client status for $800,000 deposited into an Arizona JP Morgan Chase, and now the financial institution is facing allegations of racist practices. Kennedy, who earned $13 million during his playing career, wanted the perks associated with the privileged status at the financial institution, including travel discounts, exclusive event invitations, and better deals on loans. His $800,000 balance certainly met the financial criteria. He sought answers and already had an idea what the reason was, but wanted confirmation. So Kennedy met with a bank employee and recorded the conversation. You're bigger than the average person, period. And you're also an African American, the employee, Charles Belton, who is black, told Mr. Kennedy. Now look at that. A black man told another black man this to his face. Let me read it again. You're bigger than the average person. First off, what the hell does his size have to do with him securing a private client status at the bank? Have to do with anything? You're bigger than the average person? No shit. He was a defensive tackle. All the defensive players are bigger than the average person. Then he said, and you're also an African American. Now, this could be seen as another way. First off, that bigger than the average person, when that completely threw me off. But they also could say you're African American. Could they have told this man to go out there and tell him that? See, palm colored people, a lot of them will use the buffer Negro to do their bidding for them because they are too scared and too weak to say it to the person's face. But the fact that it still came out of the mouth of another black man makes that other black man a punk in my eyes. Because if what I said is true and they told him to go say it and he actually did it, he's a weak ass Negro. And he need his ass tackled himself. We are in Arizona. I don't have to tell you about what the demographics are in Arizona. They don't see people like you a lot. So there it is right there. He just basically said it. They say that they don't see people like him a lot coming to that bank, probably at all, but especially not to secure a private client account, which you need an $800,000. I don't know what the balance is, but it says $800,000. I'm guessing that may be the balance that you need at least to hold that particular account. See, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much money you have. See, this is the thing that be getting me with some folks who, black folks who got money, because I've talked about this before. Just because you got money don't mean they gonna allow you into every institution. Period. And they used a buffer Negro to do this. Not another palm-colored person, but another black man to tell another black man to his face with a straight face that you are bigger than the average person and you're African American. They don't see people like you coming in here a lot. You don't match the demographics. So in other words, we're going to deny you for getting to get this private client account, even though you once played in the NFL and you have the money to actually do it, which means if you was to take them on as a client, that could actually be a good look for your bank. They look past all of that just because he's black. And y'all trying to tell me that this institution is not real, that we're living in right now. Sure, it may be decaying, but it ain't dead and in the ground just yet. Racism within financial institutions in America has been well documented, from black borrowers being charged higher interest rates than white borrowers with identical credit scores to black employees at the biggest financial institutions being denied the same opportunities as their white peers. The Times is also reporting that Kennedy's agent Ricardo Peters says he was the target of racial discrimination from J.P. Morgan and was ultimately fired because he is black. Wait, hold on. Let me see that again. Oh, it says his agent was also faced. The reason why it's a good thing you go back and read things again, because I had to make sure I read that correctly. So his agent faced the same exact thing, and they didn't. And I don't know what the side, like I guess the physical makeup of his agent is. I doubt that he's probably the same size as him. But just because he was black, they said he faced the same exact thing from the same exact bank. Well, I don't know if it's the same bank, but it was a J.P. Morgan. I've heard stories about J.P. Morgan, though. I've heard stories about them when it comes to dealing with black people. It says, so apparently they'll hire black people to work from, apparently, and probably not many. It's probably a quota, but they won't allow a lot of black people to bank with them. Peters was discussing a potential customer with his then boss Frank Venero after accused of violating the bank's code of conduct and being told to be aware of how his colleagues perceived him. Peters voiced concerns that another advisor was trying to steal a prospective client, a black woman who had received a $372,000 wrongful death settlement after the loss of her son. Venero's response was cold. You've got somebody who's coming from Section 8, never had a nickel to spend, and now she's got $400,000. What do you think is going to happen with that money? It's gone. So this person automatically threw a net over another black person, this time a black woman, accused her of being on Section 8. Now, I don't know if she was on Section 8 or not. And then accused her that she's just going to squander all of that money. That's another thing that they love to say about us. Granted, there are some of us who will squander a good amount of money. Those are the people who do not have any type of financial literacy. But to those of us who know how to, I guess you can say, squeeze or hold on to something, that doesn't apply to all of us. And that person made a big stereotype over this woman, especially over the fact that she just lost her son. Like, when they said his response was cold, they meant just that. They said, and when Peters objected, Venero refused to back down. He added, "You're not investing a dime for this lady. It happens every single time. This is not money she respects. She didn't earn it." Peters was transferred to a J.P. Morgan branch in a less wealthy neighborhood and considered this to be because he is black. When he filed a complaint, it was ignored by Venero and the company. Peter was fired 2 months later over a technicality and disputes he did anything wrong. Meanwhile, Peters' firing put Kennedy's funds in limbo. Kennedy returned to the bank to further inquire about his private client status and continued to record his conversations with Belton. They're not going to say this, but I don't have the same level of intimidation that they have. You know what I'm saying? Not only being a former athlete, but also being two black men. Mr. Belton said, referring to Mr. Venero. So Mr. Belton said, referring to Mr. Venero, he added, you sit in front of him, you're like 3 times his size. You feel what I'm saying? He already probably has his perception of how these interactions will go. This person pretty much profiled him from the minute he saw him. He already created in his head who this guy was by looking at, of course, his skin color and his size. He can't help that he's that size any more than he can help that he is a black man. The only thing he can control is his finances. If I was him, I would have been packed my stuff up and went to another bank. But I know why he kept going back, because he wanted to get as much as he could out of those people, evidence-wise, so he could tell it to the world. Kennedy asked Belton if he thought Venero was racist. I don't think any person at that level is dumb enough for it to be that blatant, Mr. Belton replied. I don't have any reason to believe blatantly that he's that way. He says, now, whether there's some covert action, to be honest, I'm always on the side of thinking that. You know, people that are not us probably have some form of prejudice toward us. Kennedy has since removed the bulk of his money from J.P. Morgan Chase and filed a suit. Well, I'm glad he did that. J.P. Morgan Chase issued a letter addressing Kennedy's complaint. You stated that Mr. Belton informed you that our firm was prejudiced against you and intimidated by you because of your race. We found no evidence to substantiate your allegations, the letter said. So now they're basically covering up, and they're basically going to try to say this man is lying. Well, he has the recordings based on what this article stated at the beginning. I wish we could hear them, you know, or see them, or however else, or however it was recorded. And I can believe it. And just based on the tone of how the people over at JP Morgan toward the end of this article responded to him, that seems very cold. I would never go and bank with JP Morgan. I'm fine banking right where the hell I'm at. I've been there for the last few years and have had no issues whatsoever. Anytime there was an issue on their end, they took care of it with no ill intent. I never had to get out of line with them, and they never got out of line with me. I think I only had one bad banking experience, and that's when I used to be with Bank of America, a.k.a. Thieves of America, and I got out right in time, because that was right around that time that Bank of America a few years ago was going through some issues, which is why I called them Thieves of America, and I still think they be thieving over there, but that's besides the point. But yeah, I always knew that JP Morgan as a whole, not just one bank, but the vast majority of the company, no matter where they're at, I've always had that inkling feeling that they had some racial undertones about them, especially when it came to their history, how they got founded. When you think about how they got founded, it is no surprise of how they are. But y'all let me know what y'all think about this down in the comments, and I'll talk to you in the next one.